From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. Hey, James, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Steve, and yourself?
I'm doing well. It's nice that we've been able to have such good conversations in the last couple of episodes, and we you know, I enjoy the fact that sometimes we are able to just ad lib and just share some of our common interests, and doing this has really made us both, I think, expand our horizons a bit. It's helped us to grow in different ways. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about that. We talk about how why do we do this podcast, and why do we do some of the things we do. We always talk at the end of the episodes about some of the writing we do, AV and the AM participation, and we, as you said on the last episode, it's important to get uncomfortable a bit, and this isn't something that you would expect necessarily from people who are really technical based. So um, you know you and I kind of got to know each other through this podcast. So what are some of the things that that you found, and why obviously we do this in our spare time? What are some of the values that you've been able to gather from it?
Definitely the biggest value I think we get is just the community that we are getting. I mean, I know we keep talking about that. That's why we started this podcast, as well as talking about programming and stuff. The connection you and I have is great, but also, again, just attending like last InfoComm and even the October one, having people I don't know come up to me and go, "Hey, I'm a fan of Ask the Program." I never thought that would happen in my lifetime. Funny is when I started doing podcasts, my kids would ask, "Are you famous, Dad?" And I'd be like, "No, no one's listening. It's out there. No one's listening. I'm not famous." But then I attend these shows and people actually care about what I have to say, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and I I have gotten so much out of listening to podcasts on my own, and one of the things that I tell people is that I go to podcast university. I feel like I've gotten a lot of my business education, and a lot of just keeping up with industry trends and what people are talking about through podcasts. And as you mentioned, it's kind of a bit of an intimate medium, because you get to know people. You're listening to them, but it's only one way sometimes. So it's not something, unfortunately, that when we record this, know what people are thinking and what they feel, until we run into somebody that says that they're a listener. So um, but the value I think that it provides is, has to be a function of what people are getting out of it. So you and I get a chance to talk, and we get to share our ideas, and sometimes, and I would imagine that you probably feel the same way. We learn some things that we didn't expect, or from each other, which has been really valuable. But the idea that we can really provide an avenue and a meeting point for programmers in the industry, and a way that we can convey some of the things that not everybody gets to talk about, I think has been really valuable to me.
I agree. There's a lot of outlets out there, and just being able to jump on the podcast, Ask the Program, or even the AV Life one I'm on, is very valuable. And I, like you, I listen to a fair number of podcasts as well. Probably not as many as a lot of people, but they're not all technology ones. There's actually two non-higher ed AV ones I listen to, and one is a business management leadership podcast, and another one I listen to is actually the United Soccer Coaches podcast. And there's a lot of great information that you can gain from these podcasts to put in your daily lives. Again, I'm hoping our listeners have swung by and read my July article that I post, and there's actually there's a lot of reasons I wrote that one, but one of the reasons was I was really taken back by a recent episode of the United Soccer Coaches podcast where they had the parents of Katie Myers on. And unfortunately, if you guys don't know the story of Katie Myers, she was a Stanford female goalkeeper for the female soccer team there. Uh, they just won their conference. He was, livid. Like they won in PKs, like due to her. Like she was on top of the world, you could say. She died of suicide. Um, and listening to her parents talk about it, and we all know mental health and all that stuff is very important. And yes, sometimes when people are thinking of going that route, there's a lot of red flags. Like, one of the big red flags is canceling trips. She wasn't doing that. She was purchasing plane tickets. She was making plans. So her parents was like, to us, there were no red flags. So it was very powerful to listen to that. I've gotten a great advice for business and being a leader from the business podcast I listen to. I forget the name of it. Let me look it up real quick. Even talking on here and talking with you, Steve, I've gotten great information as well and learned from there as well. Coaching for leaders. That's the one.
Yeah, what I think is kind of cool too is that when you start to listen, you normally will hear somebody or somebody will talk about another podcast and that will tip you off, and usually an avid podcast listener is always looking for another one. It's kind of like an avid reader, what's my next book that I want to read, or what recommendations do you have? You know, I don't want to turn the conversation too much because I could talk about podcasts forever. And one of the
I
things
think
that
we all could.
one of the things that I've gotten out of this is just an incredible confidence in being able to speak better and have more uh, get up in front of people in public speaking with a lot more ease. And I owe that to podcasts, both being, Tim Albright gave me the first opportunity many, many, many years ago. And I will be forever grateful as a guest and then turned into a host. But it's, it just allows you to really present your thoughts in a manner that you can be comfortable, and it's not always going to be polished. And I think those are some of the better ones when you're just speaking off the top of your head. But it's also a great way to be able to feel comfortable speaking, because not everybody gets that opportunity. And then all of a sudden they have to make a presentation and they don't know, they are really held back by fear.
I agree with you there. I know for a fact, like it's helped me get out. And I think what the biggest thing besides the podcast, also with the writing I do, is finding that people actually want to hear what I have to say. There's value to it. And I've always said this, that everyone has value, even the smallest voices in background, there's value. You need to make your voice louder and get out there. And that's really what I've learned. And I know you owe a lot to Tim Albright. I owe everything to Joe Way. And I was able to, from what I learned doing the podcast and writing, I was able to dissect what I was doing in my personal, my business, my career. I, like we all know, I just took on a new job. During that time, like this was not the only one I applied for. There was another one I applied for, and during the same time, and both of them I had to give a presentation on. The one I didn't get, the presentation when I went in, I didn't go in as myself. I've really struggled on that presentation because I wasn't comfortable. I went with a topic that it wasn't me. And this when I left that room, I was like, I bombed that presentation. I wasn't myself. I bombed it. And so when this job came across with the presentation, when I was told I had to give a presentation, I was like, I'm going as myself. And the value I gotten from talking on podcasts and doing stuff, I think aided in my interview process plus the presentation. But like I said, being able to look back and going, yeah, I bombed that because I wasn't true to myself. I don't think I would have gotten if I wasn't doing podcasts and know what value I bring.
That's really insightful. It's really insightful. I think the other thing is, I'm sure, to think about, that your potential employer, potential client, potential um, partner, users, whomever, they probably check you out online, so they probably know the types of things, and just not being genuine, or trying to be something that you're not, might be a red flag. So that's really insightful. Um, I think, before we wrap up, talking about writing, both of us write. For me, I tell people all the time that anybody that wants to write should start writing, because that's the only way that I've gotten better at it. And I went to engineering school, so I purposely avoided anything that involved writing or doing anything with papers or English or presentations. It was all uh, technical and math and science. But I feel like I've been able to embrace that different side of my brain by writing. And sometimes just the process of writing allows you to formulate thoughts, and I can't explain how much pride I take in doing that, and especially when somebody says that they read it.
Yeah.
But just the process of writing is just so therapeutic, and it takes a long time, and it's definitely not easy, but I think it's a worthwhile investment.
I agree with there. I especially if you guys follow me on social media, you'll see a lot of my posts are either grammatically or wrong or spelling mistakes. I am not great at it. Like I'm a horrible with grammar and spelling. And then when again, like I said, I owe things to Joe. When he approached me about writing for the magazine, I'm like, you want me to write for you? Like, come on, I'm a horrible writer. But I felt, yeah, like it's a practice, it's the repetition, it's getting out there. And I actually have felt my writing has improved with doing writing. Funny enough.
Yeah, it's like many other things, you get better at something by doing.
Yep.
And a lot of, and I think that that's probably a good way for us to wrap it up, because what I would encourage, two calls to action. I think one is for our audience to start doing things that they want to get better at, and the second would be for them to share some progress, and tell us what how they've been able to do something, and what they've gotten out of it. And the bonus one would be to share some of your favorite podcasts and articles or columns with each other, and use hashtag Ask the Programmer. Hopefully this is one of the podcasts that you enjoy, but it's I think that part of this can also be to making sure that everyone in the community or everyone in the industry that has been contributing gets but recognized for it, especially if it's something that you really value.
Uh,
James, with that said, and any last words, but share how people can get in touch with you, and of course, write and listen to what you're putting out there.
just wanted to add that I love what you just said there. The challenge definitely, listeners, post, let us know um, the progress you're making, all that stuff. As always, you can find me on Twitter, AV_James King, Sunday morning with AV in the AM. Um, Also, writer for the Higher Ed Digital Magazine, where I write the IT and AV column. And again, search me on the internet. I'm sure you'll find me.
And for me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. LinkedIn and Twitter are the places that I spend the most time on. And I will echo, and maybe this is something that we can start a little bit of a call to action for ourselves, is maybe we can talk to our friend Chris Netto about an Ask the Programmer AV in the AM, so that because James and I are always there and we see some familiar faces there, we'd like to encourage more to join on Sunday mornings. It's always a good conversation, and a lot of times those conversations help feed this show. You could read my work on AV Network, as well as Commercial Integrator, and my company blog at controlconcepts.net. And if I'm going to share podcasts, and you could check out at State of Control on avnation.tv. And James says, I will link to James' article that he mentioned, because we've mentioned this in more than one of our shows about mental health. Please check that out, as well as the AV Life podcast that James is on. So with that, this has been Ask the Programmer.